Things are about to get really crazy in Washington, D.C. We have Marjorie Taylor Green calling for the remover of House Speaker Johnson. We've got Letitia James and Judge Arthur Engoron about to make moves on two of Donald Trump's properties and so much more. To help me go through these stories, I have AJ Rice. AJ, thank you so much for coming on today.
Steve, great to be here, my brother. It's always a pleasure.
So just to give people some background, you work one-on-one with some of the highest level people in education and also politics. You're a publisher, you're an author, you're a political genius. I appreciate you coming on. I want to jump right into the Letitia James situation. From filings and articles I'm reading, she's about to make a move on two of Donald Trump's properties, Trump National Golf Course and the Seven Springs Estate, both of them immaculate, beautiful properties. That she is merciless. I think they've brought this fraudulent case. They've done this once in a lifetime mega fine. And then now they're using that to block him from getting to real judges that would appeal his case and throw this whole thing out. What are your thoughts on this entire situation?
Well, look, as we've talked about, no one, not one politician, has been hunted the way Donald John Trump has been hunted. I mean, other than the ones that were shot. And I've never seen this before in the United States, not like this, but I have seen it. And you know, the thing with Trump is you have to ask yourself, why are they hunting him like this? Why are they hunting him? I mean, he could take off in his plane and never land if he wanted to. But this is about humiliation. This is about the fact that everything they've tried at this point hasn't worked. I mean, you've got two phony impeachments, these four phony indictments. And I'm sure they'll bring more if it doesn't work. But the reality is he is bigger than all of this. He is the leader of a movement in a way that, you know, maybe Lincoln with the radical Republican abolitionists, you know, led by Thaddeus Stevens. The founding generation had a movement like this, but they were fighting with each other. You know, Adams and Hamilton were Federalists, but they didn't get along. Jefferson and Adams were friends, and then they weren't, and then they were. They didn't really get along. I mean, the election of 1800 was a disaster. That was back when the runner-up became vice president. Andrew Jackson had a movement. It was, you know, an era where his own party, after 24 years, his own party had grown somewhat complacent and corrupt. You had 8 years of Jefferson, 8 years of Madison, 8 years of Monroe, all from Virginia. And Jackson comes along, he wants to mix it up. Because he was fighting really against the establishment, the Democratic Republican Party. That's what they were called. The opposition were the Whigs, and they didn't have much power. You know, John Adams' son, John Quincy Adams. Trump has a movement like this. You can hate him for it, fine. Try to beat him at the ballot box, fine. But it is such a threat. It's an existential threat to all kinds of people. The permanent state, the deep state, the cushy deals, the phony global warming companies, the pharmaceutical companies. He is a threat to them. The doctors that are asking for research grants so that they can mutilate children with trans surgeries. He's a threat to all of this, to NATO, to the World Economic Forum. So they're willing to cross Rubicons that countries in the West rarely cross. Because Letitia James might as well be Robert Mugabe's sister. Or maybe she's Robert Mugabe in drag. She kind of looks like Robert Mugabe in drag. She is acting like a classic wealth confiscating, land confiscating, autocratic, tin pot dictator. And not even the good ones. We're talking about the half-assed ones in Latin America and sub-Saharan Africa, right? Asia. That's what she looks like. This is classic, land grab stuff. And you create a phony trial. First of all, you create charges that are just phony, Stalin-esque charges. You have a kangaroo court, goofy trial that means nothing. Every real estate developer in the world, whether they love Trump or hate him, they're on television screaming, "We're next," because you might be, because you're opening Pandora's box, because you could get a Republican president or a Republican governor. I mean, look, whether it's DeSantis or Sarah Huckabee Sanders, they ought to look into what Democrats own property in Arkansas. Do the Clintons, can Sarah Huckabee Sanders bring charges against Bill and Hillary Clinton if they still own property down there? And if not them, maybe some of the trailer park relatives. I mean, this could go on forever. Letitia James is a classic third world Marxist. This is third world behavior. It is an embarrassment. It's not going to promote commerce. And look, when they do this, they run out there because they hear Wall Street and they hear chambers of commerce members saying, "Oh my God, Trump was using the system the way we all do. And now they're going to start confiscating property." Well, who else doesn't she like? I mean, it's a good thing Musk doesn't really own anything. He kind of just doesn't own a home. He floats around. Nobody knows where he's at. Because who knows who would go after him? Who knows? So it's a disaster. It looks like Che Guevara and Fidel coming down from the mountain. But it's been stamped with the approval of the Empire State. The state of New York's okay with this. The state of New York's okay with this. I mean, imagine the Rockefellers and the Vanderbilts and, Leland Stanford and the moneyed classes, the Roosevelts. Can you imagine if, Eisenhower started grabbing properties from the Roosevelts, or some Republican governor of New York, Republican Attorney General of New York, started grabbing Roosevelt property in the Hudson River Valley in the 40s and 50s and 60s? Look, we've crossed the Rubicon. We're in a brave new world here. Anything goes. So, whether it's impeachments at the federal level, charges at the federal level, the amount of law, this is going to be, I guess, this new battleground, this lawfare battleground. People are worried about, oh my God, Trump's talking about this and that, and we're going on the revenge tour. To some degree, we need to go on a revenge tour. We need to act like Klingons. Serve it cold. Serve this revenge cold. Because that's where we're at here. You have done everything except shoot at this man. You attack his family. You attack his children. You attack his wife. You attack his wife, his former wife that died. Don and Eric's mother who died. You attack his mother-in-law. It's unbelievable, which tells me this is quite possibly the most important American, certainly since Reagan, in a way, because Reagan wasn't being attacked domestically like this. He had the dictators abroad wetting their diapers. This is more important because the dictators abroad are here. What's the old line from the Revolutionary War? I don't know who exactly said it. It might have been Henry. It might have been the Swamp Fox. This talk about what would you rather have? One dictator 3,000 miles away or 3,000 dictators 1 mile away? Well, Stephen, ladies and gentlemen, we've got dictators 1 mile away, sometimes 10. And it's not being separated like in 1860 by geography. In entire neighborhoods that are in a cool right now, a cold war with each other, based on yard signs, based on school board seats. And Trump is a disruptor. He's a dissident. He's a disruptor. He is a counterculture icon, which I call him in the book behind me. It used to be the left that were, in the streets and fighting against the man, power to the people. But now they're in government. They're in the Pentagon, right? They've always been at the State Department. And look, a lot of these sort of, Mugabi-esque attorney generals, district attorneys like Fani Willis, the great brainchild of Atlanta, Georgia. A lot of these people were propped up and put there with foreign money, with the George Soros Foundation money. So look, we all need to wake up. It's no longer, we always knew international Marxists and the sort of, the election interference global overlords, that they weren't just going to stop trying to pick president. Because you might get one that surprises you. So, Soros is putting money into, from president all the way down to dog catcher. So you need to be aware when you have off-year elections and when you have midterm elections and you're going in and there's a district attorney on the ballot or there's an attorney general on the ballot, you need to be aware that you might get a Fani Willis. You might get a Letitia James. You might get an Alvin Bragg. You might get the nitwit in Chicago that said that Juicy Smollett was telling the truth. The woman in, what was it, Cincinnati, who went after that couple that was standing in their front yard with the AR-15, the McCluskys. I forget that nitwit's name. But look, all these people are acting like they have these little fiefdoms, these little, third world tin pot dictatorships, and there's no checks on them in these places. There's no one to check them because chances are the city council or the board of supervisors, whoever the hell it is, they agree with it. They agree with it. So, yes, we've gone from one dictator 3,000 miles away to 3,000 dictators 1 mile away. And they're not afraid to go after the former president of the United States. And we have to fight back against it.
Yeah. Oh, man. It's scary. I never thought that I would live through something like this. It is like witnessing a banana republic. I know that phrase gets tossed around. One person that's trying to make changes and force good policy is Representative Marjorie Taylor Green from Georgia. This morning, she announced she is not happy with this $1.2 trillion spending bill. It does very little for the American people. It does very little for the border crisis. She is saying that she is thinking about removing Speaker Mike Johnson from the speakership position. What do you know about this? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, MTG's a client. I don't know whether we put her. Did we put her on here?
She's been on my show because of you guys. Yes.
Yeah. We did her last book. Everyone should go pick up that book, and it's just called MTG. You don't need, with MTG, you don't need anything more than 3 letters, right? She is, again, she's another counterculture icon, and if you don't like it, she'll bench press you and toss you out the window. She's a killer. We need more of them. I can see where she's going with Johnson. Part of the problem with the establishment of the Republican Party is they don't like their own voters. They don't like their own voters. First, they didn't know who they were. Trump let them know in 2016 who their voters were, which is why you've got these, the fancy people, Kinzinger, Kinzinger's in the bathtub. He's hanging out in the bathtub with Bill Kristol and the Vindman brothers, Alexander Vindman, and they're in DC here. They all talk to each other, and they all go to each other's salad bar, and they toss away. I will tell you, with MTG, I don't have any special knowledge of what she's up to. So let me just put that out there. But she is much more than just a disruptor. She obviously, tactically, needs this fight to happen. Now, the Republican National Committee got cleaned out recently, and they've got MAGA people in there. Is Johnson a moderate? As far as I can tell, he is not. I know people that know him in Louisiana. Scott McKay, who might have been on your show, he's got a book out about the Obamas. I think Johnson wrote the foreword to his last book. I mean, he is not a conservative. But from what I can tell, he inherited all of McCarthy's staff. Which, the fish rots from the head. But, you can remove Hugo Chavez, and here comes Maduro, right? Or Maduro's people. I mean, they didn't clean house. He didn't bring in a whole new staff. So that's a problem. Look, personnel is power. And, Peter Navarro talked about Trump coming to Washington and, having some of these characters around him, the Rex Tillersons and the other, the different people, the different grifters that kind of floated into the White House. And Navarro was always saying, Navarro was there all 4 years, and very few others were, Stephen Miller and a few others. You could trust them. They're MAGA guys. But Johnson having these characters around him obviously is influencing him. And the Republican Party, MTG, Gates, whoever it is, they have a short fuse. You're not getting a long-ass leash, right? You're getting a little baby leash. And if they don't like what they're seeing at the end of that leash, you're going to get the leash yanked. Because we've had it. We've had it. Going back to Dennis Hastert, right? So whether it's Boehner, who spent most of his time smoking in a tanning bed, or whether it's Paul Ryan, who lied to us, the great genius, Paul Ryan, the great mathematician, the Princess Bride of the Chamber of Commerce. Look, we've had it. McCarthy was the next man up. But McCarthy was part of that group with Eric Cantor. What happened to him? Eric Cantor scalps on the wall. Paul Ryan scalps on the wall. McCarthy's is on the wall. Johnson's may end up on the wall. I think Johnson's probably a good man. I know he's a devout Catholic, and I know some guys at the Federalist Society that he's clerked for. They all speak very highly of him. But Washington, D.C. is a Leviathan. The Leviathan. If anybody's watching here, I'm not just the author of The Walking Dead. I am the CEO of Publius PR. We have represented everyone from Charles Krauthammer and George P. Bush to RFK Jr., Donald Trump Jr., and MTG. Okay? So we got, we're reasonable here. We don't apply purity tests. I'm not the purity test guy. I think you start applying purity tests, you end up looking like the left, right? So I'm against purity tests. But you reach a point that the Leviathan of the swamp, you can't escape it. The more you move, the more you sink. Now, I know Steve Scalise. There's certain people that are on deck, but some of these people were tried already. They were tried already, and they didn't get enough votes. Even Jim Jordan couldn't get enough votes. So if Johnson goes, they might be looking to someone like Byron Donalds. There's other names. But when you inherit a staff of, you know, rhinos, or, you know, here's the thing, because a lot of us, especially in talk radio world, and I come from that. I'm Laura Ingram's former executive producer. We throw around, even Trump does this. We throw around these terms like rhino, you know, moderate, and this and that. It's more than that. It's more than that. Permanent Washington, and look, Bannon articulates this very well because he's here. Bannon, the Catholic guy, grew up in Richmond. He's been in D.C. for a while. Since he took over Breitbart, he's here. He knows what I'm about to say, and he knows it from Goldman Sachs, and he knows it from working in Hollywood and other things. And people like Ingram, who have been here since college, know it. Tucker knows it. He's been here a long time, even though he's from California. I mean, he had to leave. But there is this club. It's real. It's not just a pejorative, hey, he's a rhino, hey, the elephants and rhinos. It's not about that. It has to do with dignity of some made-up, fictitious idea of some phony gentleman's agreement that of some past age that they, I guess, imagine was the case in Washington. It's never been the case. The Vice President of the United States shot Alexander Hamilton. Andrew Jackson let whores and people on horses ride through the White House after it had just been rebuilt after the British burned it. So I guess a lot of their analogies, I mean, look, Lyndon Johnson hated John F. Kennedy. Hated him. Calhoun, who's a nut from South Carolina, who's constantly trying to secede from the Union, he was Andrew Jackson's vice president. He hated him. He hated him. Did Truman and FDR get along? I don't think so. Truman and Eisenhower didn't. Did Eisenhower and Nixon? Yeah, they did. I mean, their children married each other. The Bushes and the Reagans did not like each other in 1980. I mean, Buchanan tells a story about how Reagan was considering making Ford the vice president again. And it was Baker with his Saudi magic wand that came in and made sure his guy, the former head of the CIA, George H.W. Bush, was the vice president. And we all kissed and made up, right? Chris Christie was the one to tell Trump to put Pence on the ticket. People forget this. Chris Christie, the governor, when Pence was the governor, they were buddies, the head of the Republican Governors Association. He's the recommender, okay? So I can tell you this, ain't nobody like that recommending anything now. So whoever Trump picks, it's going to be like King Kong, Trump Kong, naked in the jungle. You're going to get a naked in the jungle pick. You're not getting, you know, H.R. McMaster and all these other characters picking anything. And if he wins, they ain't picking a cabinet either. I will tell you this. Most of these people play nice with me because of my clients. And because I'm out there like this. I'm the only head of a major PR firm that comes out from behind the curtain, puts down my cocktail from my Georgetown cocktail party. You know, I don't know whether the audience could tell, but, you know, I'm an Irish Catholic Eagles fan from Philadelphia. I don't always exactly get invited places, you know, but I have. I'm like a specimen, I guess. Mainly because of the power of the PR firm. And because at this point, you can't avoid me. Like, I'm here, right? I'm like freaking Thanos. I'm right in front of you. There's no hiding. I'm collecting Infinity Stones. There's no hiding. So MTG is one of my Infinity Stones. And I will tell you, if she's doing this to Johnson, she has a purpose. And people are going to throw a fit, and the Republicans are dysfunctional and this and that. Good. The worst thing that ever happened to Washington, D.C., which is below sea level, was air conditioning, central air conditioning. So if you want to blame I can't even get through this joke without laughing. If you want to blame anyone for why Washington is dysfunctional, you can blame Mr. Carrier. You can blame the inventor of the air conditioner. You can blame Mr. Carrier, Carrier air conditioners, because they used to have to leave when it got hot. And it's hot here a lot. It's hot a lot. You know? And you got mosquitoes coming in. When all kinds of fun things come with mosquitoes. So look, these people really do hang out together. Your audience needs to understand it's not just Rhino. Most of these people did not go to a state school. They never worked a job with their hands. They only see longshoremen and lumberjacks and blacksmiths and farmers and people that sweat copper and oil rig workers. They only see them in movies and films or as the butt of jokes, but that's why you get populists from time to time. To Bernie Sanders' credit, I know he owns a bunch of houses and he would love to just come in here and take my furniture, but he has hung out with some of these people. He has. Buchanan did. Perot did. Ralph Nader did. Reagan did. That's where the Reagan Democrats came from. Harry Truman and John F. Kennedy did. Teddy Roosevelt did. So there is a history of, we've had it with both of you. We've had it with the Uniparty. Where you're just sort of, it's R, it's D, it's R, it's D, and you're just, look, the plan was, to have 8 years of Bill Clinton, 8 years of George W. Bush, then probably maybe 8 years of Hillary, then maybe 8 years of Jeb. That was the plan. And to Obama's credit, until they put the dossier in front of him, or they put the 3-ring binder in front of him. Up until that point, when he locked up the nomination, I always think about this, Stephen. I always think about, because there's a meeting that happens. Now, we know about the Trump meeting, because this is when Clapper and Comey and they went up to the tower and they all said hi to Bannon, and they walk in and they say, oh, we got this is where the Steele dossier, but not just that, the threat matrix. Basically, they start giving him presidential briefings after he wins. And whatever they told Trump in that meeting, he said, I don't give a bleep, go to bleep. I don't give a bleep, go to bleep. Whereas Obama probably wet himself and said, okay, experts. Okay, Fiona Hill. Who else is here? Oh, Eric Holder's here, thank God. We play basketball together. That was the moment Obama was no longer the black radical from Chicago. The community organizer kind of vanished. And he became a company man. So he disrupted what was going to be, I guess, 32 years of Clinton, Bush. But then, I don't know whether Michelle's carrying him around in her purse, or whether Panetta, whoever it was at the time, who was the head of the CIA at the end there for W? I forget. But the point is, it wasn't George Tenet. He was in the beginning. But whatever happened, Obama got neutered, and he just became a company man, right? And then they tried again with Hillary. All right. Obama fell in line. Let's bring Hillary back, so we can make sure the reset and the World Economic Forum and the one world government. I can't believe I'm talking like this. I wish it wasn't true. I wish this was all just some, Jason Bourne movie, but it isn't. Unfortunately. So they got back with it with Hillary, and then the disruptor shows up. And they are going to do everything in their power to make sure the disruptor doesn't, take out the meat puppet, because they did everything in their power to make the disruptor go away in 2020. And that's another show for another day. And you've had other guests that are better experts on, zip drives than I am. But look, so now they got Biden. They know him. He's a shell of a human being. He's just this sort of empty Rubbermaid trash can from Delaware that they're just putting their whatever they want. They get whatever they want. Like we talked about. He's like Ron Burgundy's great grandfather. I mean, he'll sign whatever and he'll give whatever speech. He'll lie. They'll lie about what Trump said. The bloodbath. There's going to be a bloodbath. Just like the very fine people. Hoax. There were very fine people on both sides. Hoax. It's not what he meant. It's not what he said. Read the transcript. But whether it's bloodbath or the wonderful, very fine people, and my next book, which is coming out this summer, is all about the very fine people. So stay tuned. I'll be back. They'll use their propaganda with social media, propaganda engines. They'll do whatever they can. They are not going to let the greatest disruptor since Teddy Roosevelt, maybe since JFK, the greatest disruptor in 100 years or 50 years back in the White House. They are not going to allow that. That is not happening. No freaking way.
Yeah, well, there's something really interesting going on, because this morning on Breitbart News, I read that according to polling data, there is almost no chance that Joe Biden can win. There's never in American history been a president that had such a low approval rating that went on to retain his seat. Even in other countries, there's just this threshold where if you're so many days out to an election and your approval rating is below a number, you are gone. So right away, people should take comfort in knowing, unless they rig this or do something to Trump, there should be no way mathematically that Joe Biden can win, according to this polling data, right? Sure. So, but on the flip side, you have Biden. He's raising almost $50 million a month. And so, you have to really ask, is this a we the people country anymore? I don't think that it is. It is these corporate donors, the ultra wealthy, the foreign influence through back channels. They're the ones really running everything. Do we the people even really have a chance? Like, mathematically, yes, this guy can't win, and yet he may actually win, because the people that have more money than you and I are going to prop up the meat puppet, prop up Weekend at Bernie's President Joe Biden. That's my worry, is we the people do not like this guy or his policies, but the people that make tons of money off of him do.
Well, look, we've seen, in the past, and in a fairly recent past, we've seen the animosity of the American people show up in the form of Pat Buchanan, Ralph Nader, Ross Perot, Ron Paul. Trump has a little bit of all of them. He also has a little bit of Bernie Sanders. The Bernie Sanders people are real. Yes, they want, to empty your refrigerator out, but they're real and they're pissed. They had an election and a convention rigged against them. We know because Donna Brazile told us. Hillary and Debbie Wasserman Schultz, old peanut butter mouth. They used the superdelegates. 2016 election, Hillary gets what Hillary wants. If you look at today, it's obvious the left that's running Jill Stein and Cornel West and RFK Jr., which is this sort of hybrid of Bernie world, MAGA world, Ron Paul world. If you add up all of these people, we are the majority. I mean, look, the pumpkin spice mafia, the elite, prepped, fancy school kids, they never went to community college. They all majored in some freaking humanities department nonsense. and they're all friends with each other. They're all members of the same country club, which is real. They're all eating at the same restaurants. You know, they know what an amuse-bouche is. These people, right? Liz Cheney can hang out with, you know, Nancy Pelosi now, apparently. I mean, it's insane. But they're shrinking. They are, some of them, Nepo babies. They are elite. They are mostly white. They are liberal. They haven't worked a freaking day in their life. They don't know what it's like to freaking dig ditches. They don't know what it's like to have your entire town get lung cancer because of a coal mine or the water supply in Flint, Michigan, or any one of these things. So, but they're on the run. They are on the run. And if we could just get enough of these rebel factions, and you look at all of history, right? Look, Patrick Henry and Thomas Jefferson hated each other, and they lived about 50 miles from each other here in Virginia. But they knew they had to join together. They had to join together. The Federalists, the Anti-Federalists, you know, I mean, these guys didn't all get along. George Mason and James Madison didn't get along. Now we had some figures at the time, mainly two, that were consensus figures. And unfortunately, even though Trump is James Dean, he's Tupac, you know, he's Jesse James, he's not a consensus figure. Teddy Roosevelt wasn't a consensus figure either. He became president because McKinley got assassinated, and then he went about his business doing what Teddy Roosevelt does. But George Washington and Benjamin Franklin were consensus figures, and all the people under them, the Hamiltons and the John Jays, John Adams, Sam Adams, they all respected these two figures, and thank God that those two figures were there in the beginning. Otherwise, we'd have had more, you know, Aaron Burr situations. But if we could get the RFK Jr. people, and look, I mean, Stephen, you know this, your audience may know it if they you know, look me up. I have a foot in the RFK camp and in the Trump camp. I straddle these worlds. Other people do too. Bannon does, Tucker does, Tulsi Gabbard does. I mean, there's all Naomi Wolf does. There's, you know, but who are the people I just named? These are all rebel type figures. These are dissident type figures. These are people where, you know, the goalposts have moved on them. They didn't move. Like Reagan used to say, I didn't leave the Democrat Party left me. So that's where we're at. And if we could just get some of these rebel figures to unite, then you could take on the empire. You know, to use Star Wars, what do we got back there? We got you got a stormtrooper back there. I don't know. In the old days, you had a stormtrooper back there.
Yeah,
but if you could get, I see Iron Man back there now. If you could get these different factions to stop sniping at each other, to take on Palpatine, you know, you could win. If you watch a Lord of the Rings, I mean, Gandalf knew that he had to get these different countries, Gondor and Rohan, and I know I'm going down the nerd tunnel here, but in all of history, Churchill knew we had to get the Americans in the war somehow, or we're done. We're done. And he, you know, the greatest gift the Japanese could have ever given Churchill was that attack on Pearl Harbor. Because the resistance here, not just from FDR, who was an anti-colonialist, didn't want to come to the aid of the United Kingdom, the British Empire, and from the sort of, you know, the Republicans who really didn't want to get involved in another ground war in Europe. You know, I mean, Churchill knew we had to bring these factions to the table. And he was able to get, even though Japan attacked us, so Japan declares war on us, attacks us. We declare war on Japan. Germany then declares war on us. Churchill was obsessed with, okay, we're all in it now. Can I get FDR to go with a Europe first strategy? Meaning, even though the Japanese just hit you, can you turn your focus on Europe first? Because with the V2 rockets raining down on London, you know, there is a scenario where a reverse D-Day happens and the Germans start landing, you know, in London and start, the cliffs, landing in York and landing in, they do an aquatic landing of Great Britain, but it didn't happen. So you have to build these coalitions. And if the FDR or the RFK people, and even maybe some of the Cornel West people and the Trump people, if we can figure out a way to unite on the things we have in common versus the purity test, the picayune things that we don't have in common, we could do a serious blow to the deep state. We could. But the question is whether we'll just act like, the French Revolution and just, we chopped off the king's head and now we're chopping each other's heads off. I mean, Robespierre got it. Robespierre, led, the storming of the Bastille, and he made sure Marie Antoinette's head got chopped off. Then he got his own head chopped off, right? So that's the problem, right? That's the problem. People are saying that Trump is not considering RFK as a running mate. RFK is saying it. RFK's wife, who's a very famous Hollywood liberal, very funny woman, Cheryl Hines, she doesn't want it. So it might be a pipe dream, unfortunately. And that's a shame. That's a shame because, that might be the only way we can overtake them. Now, with that said, you were mentioning poll numbers. Something is happening in the African American and Hispanic American community. It's real. It is real. It's not just TikTok. It's not just finding 5 black guys that say they love Trump and then having, Charlie Kirk share it, right? The regular working middle class, the working poor have been hosed. They've been hosed. Not just by one party. And newly arrived Hispanics came here because they were escaping a dump, a Marxist dump, most of them. So they don't want the United States to become a Marxist dump. So, if they're escaping Hugo Chavez, they're not going to turn around and vote for Hugo Chavez, which is why you see these counties along the Rio Grande Valley, which are mostly Democrat and Latin. Trump won a bunch of them. So, and every state is now a border state. Hispanics are mostly Catholic. They usually live in multi-generational homes where like grandmom's in the house, right? Great-grandma might be in the house. So they have a cultural affinity to keep government out of their church and out of their house and to, work their asses off. So, and I don't care whether they join, plumbers union or whether they're lettuce pickers. And the Democrats have made a really gigantic miscalculation. I think it was sooner or later, African Americans are going to wake up, especially when we tell them if they're not black, if they don't vote for me, right? Like Biden told the Breakfast Club. African Americans they're moving into the upper middle class. They're becoming more educated. More of them are majoring in, finance and science rather than just African American studies or, woke studies. They're staying out of the communications department. We need to replace them with someone. We need to, basically the Democrats, party of slavery, party of Jim Crow, party of segregation, party of this, party of Biden, party of, if you're not with me, you're not black, party of the 1619 Project. So I think the calculation was blacks are going to leave us. We need to replace them with someone else that'll just do what we tell them to. I know. Let's import a bunch of conservative Latin Catholics to replace them. Well, while this is happening, the blacks see it. African Americans, they see it. Look, I'm from Philadelphia, okay? I grew up on the playground, so I'm very comfortable talking about these things, okay? Really. My first Halloween costume was Dr. J, all right? So you know where I'm coming from. I can name every member of the Wu-Tang Clan. So African Americans are looking at Democrats trying to replace them with Latins. Latins are showing up here and they're saying to themselves, wait a minute. I'm not voting for wealth confiscation. I'm not voting for Letitia James. I'm not voting for freaking, Joe Biden. So maybe Bush was right. W. Maybe family values don't stop at the Rio Grande. And of all people, like Nixon going to China, for Hispanics to gravitate towards Donald Trump. And you got tons of athletes, African-American athletes, rappers. They like Trump too. African-American influencers on TikTok, they like Trump. Right? The Democrats are worried about gold sneakers. It's about the country. It's not about gold sneakers. It's about the fact that you have failed them. $7 eggs, gas prices, inflation. They cannot buy a home. So you're screwed. And while all that's happening, the Democrats are hugging Hamas. So now you got a bunch of classically Democrat Jewish Americans going, maybe we shouldn't vote for our own beheading anymore in the upper Northeast and the West Coast. So maybe that's why you're seeing those numbers, Stephen. Yeah. You might be seeing those numbers because the traditional pieces of the pizza pie that the left takes for granted, treats like shit, and abuses are leaving them. Now, the Republican Party, they might not be leaving them for the Republican Party. They're leaving them for one person who talks to them and they know and they're comfortable with. They're comfortable with. So, look, we're going to have to see what happens. But there is a realignment happening. And the elite, effete, Peloton using, Audi hatchback driving, pumpkin spice, soy boys are moving towards the Democrats. They are. Do we need them? How many of them are there really? I don't know. But the Republican Party at least is becoming more multi-ethnic and more blue collar. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I love it. I love seeing all the faces coming in and people waking up, realizing, wait a minute, I'm being betrayed by my own party. It's actually fun to see. I hope it will take hold this election cycle because I don't know that we can do 4 more years of Biden. AJ, I want to thank you for coming on. I'm going to put a link to your book, The Woking Dead, down below. I hope you'll come back this summer when your new book comes out. But keep fighting, keep putting out those incredible books for your clients. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Well, look, we love you. You're a patriot. Your audience is not just your audience is a plethora of opinions and backgrounds and walks of life. We've heard from them when we've been on. So that is what we need more of. We need more of talented people that agree on 80% of being an American, coming together, got to listen to the shows like this for sure, working together and sharing ideas, you know, and it's not intellectual appropriation. You know, left talks about cultural appropriation. We need intellectual cross references. We need to share ideas because, you know, if we all cherry pick each other, we will end up with a better product. And I know that's what this audience is looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you again for those kind words and for coming on. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.